Hey, what's up, everybody? We are recording live. We haven't started scheduling these things on Twitter because we're just messing around with them. But what an insane day we had today. I am Blutoshi, and we got Disco here as well.
Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. It was a very exciting day. It was, it's almost one of those days where you look back and you feel like it was, at least a week or a month of activities. So there were highs and lows and panics and FOMOs, and it was really, it's what we kind of strapped in for and what we like to do.
Yeah, I was traveling today. I mean, it started at 57, went to 62. With that said, though, sit back, relax. Again, we are live on the X and YouTube, but enjoy the intro, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to Decentral Lens, where lifelong friends, Blutoshi and Disco, navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With nuance as our North Star, our goal is to empower listeners with the insights to learn and to prosper.
All right, Disco, what'd you think? The intro, then the intro. Us introing, I like doing that because it's like, oh, hey, and it's like just reminding people that we're experimenting, but we're also live, because
Yeah.
that's important, and it's important to know.
Well, I was a little bit thrown off, but because I'm used to hearing the music and being like, "Oh, now we go." But I think it's
Yeah.
better, and I think it's more reflective of kind of how things are going with the immediacy. And I do agree with the need for the going live today of all days for sure, because it was just one for the books, just something that you don't run across very often.
Yeah, so today is Wednesday, February 28th. I was actually in a different state today. I traveled the last couple days, but my goodness, before the show, I was asking Disco, I'm like, God, that's crazy. It went from like 62 to 64, then back to 60 today. He's like, no, dude, it was like 57. I'm like, wasn't that like 3 days ago? It's amazing how quickly the short squeeze with Bitcoin can come from these Bitcoin ETFs. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Well, I don't think that there is anything. We were prepared for it conceptually. We've been talking about it for months and months and months, but still nobody really it's still never been done before territory, and I don't know as much about the history of Bitcoin with the halvenings and stuff, but it looks like it's going to hit an all-time high before April, which is kind of crazy if you really think about it. So I think that the baseline is just so new, and I don't think that anyone really has a full understanding of just what this surge of interest and purchasing is doing. And because of that, you're seeing something start in the 50s and jump to 64 and then go down to 59. But you know what? By the end of the day, or probably while we're going right now, it's probably normalized to a number that's significantly higher than it ended yesterday. So it just continues to kind of build on itself. And when you kind of just look at the fundamentals of supply and demand, like that's what we've always said. There's a fixed supply, there's a fixed supply, and there's almost infinite demand. And then you get into theories of who are some of these different entities that are trying to acquire as much as they can in short periods of time outside of just the
Yeah.
ETF. So there's just a ton of way to look at this.
Yeah, and we've got answers too. I mean, just look at this.
Yeah.
This chart, I know it's small on Twitter. This is today. This is effing today. Like, look at, I mean, it's like flatlining down here, and I don't expect you to squint and be able to read that, but we're at 57,000 before we're all waking up. If you go to the 7 day, even that 57,000, that's like right, where is that? That's like right here. That's this plateau. Remember before I call it
Which is
crabbing. We spent like 5 or 6 days at 50, 51. And this show is never about price, but these last 24 hours, we're way up here in the stratosphere, hugging 56. And then we all woke up just to like, what is happening? And I think we hit 60 even before the market opened this morning. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Because I was watching, and this is a point that not enough people are talking about, in my humble opinion. And I always, kind of look to see, okay, what's on CNBC when I'm getting coffee or whatever it is. And I saw nothing but red. So the Dow and Nasdaq were, I don't know how they finished up, but at least when this was going on, it was all down. And that was always, when I first got interested in this, and that decoupling, was always something that I was so excited and rooting for. Be like, okay, cool, we can finally get involved with something that isn't tethered directly to the US stock market. And seeing that really happen today when you're seeing Bitcoin jump to, almost an all-time high. And as you say, go from 57 to 64 is a pretty incredibly high, jump just for one asset. But to see it do it despite, what's going on. So any of the arguments of like risk on liquidity and all that sort of stuff that you hear the talking heads on, TradFi, media talking about, they don't know how to explain this.
Right.
And subsequently, they're not, that's the other thing. Like they're not really covering it, which is pretty ridiculous because they love jumping on when it's a bad story.
Yeah, so the market started more down today, but it only ended up pretty much flat or down like 0.1%. But you make a good point. Like when Bitcoin untethers like that, I just think the pent-up demand is just massive. One interesting thing we saw, someone had a great tweet today that the infrastructure for the whole ETFs, the wire transfers and everything to make it a smooth process for the 11 ETFs to get in on, after they purchase, they obviously have to hold that in their, wallets. And that infrastructure could be all set up and smoothed out like in 6 to 9 months. So the floodgates for a lot of these banks who are trying to get in, obviously you can still get in with ETFs. It's not hard to buy, but I think the big bank infra, it's going to take a while. So what we're seeing is trickles. I think the pent up demand is coming, and it's only, dare I say, going to get more.
Yeah. And you're starting to see more, kind of posts and things from that direction saying, these asset managers are recommending X amount to potentially be in digital assets. And most of the numbers that you see floating around are a lot higher than we would have even anticipated when we were talking about the impending approval, in fourth quarter of last year when everyone was really bullish. No one was thinking that it was going to go like, Fidelity already is saying north of like 1 to 3% of portfolios should look at that. And then you have some other speculation that they're going to say closer to 30% on some. So again, we go 30, back to the one.
Hold on, back up. The 1 to 3%.
I saw that. Yeah.
What do you mean 30% of what?
I saw of your portfolio, and that's something that we should discuss and get into is how much
Fidelity said that, or someone else?
No, not Fidelity, but I saw that from a major house that someone was saying it's not out of line for them to recommend this. So no, Fidelity, I believe I've seen up to 1 to 3% right now. And it's so weird though still, because like I was doing a little gobbling up today and looking at some of the ETFs and getting in there. And it's just so funny how you have to do like 9 different warning approvals, when you get into this asset class, when you're doing the ETFs. Yeah. And it's like, oh, or you got to be super aggressive. Oh, are you sure you really want to press that button? It's like, dude, just let me press the button. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I didn't have to do it because I gobbled a little today too. Because I feel like we're in a slow motion. Like the train is running in slow motion, and front running it is so easy. And I'm not talking about like front running it today, this morning, because it went up and down and up and down, and we've got some anecdotal evidence as to why, but like it just seems so odd. Mainstream America and retail, they're not even really looking at this. Obviously some institutional players are, people who already exist in the space are here, but it just feels like it's on nobody's radar. And we're like, dude, we're what, $6,000 away from American all-time highs, and we've already hit all-time highs in 7 countries. I know Japan was one, Egypt was one. Those are the only 2 that I remembered, but there was a bunch. We forget the inflation.
There were a couple big ones. I saw a couple big ones today hit it too. I forgot. Yeah, okay. And so it's a story that's going all over. But it kind of feels like, so say you've been like a diehard Bears fan or whatever, right? And, then all of a sudden you're sitting there like looking at your phone after they're raising the trophy and they won like a Super Bowl for the first time since '85, and you expect your phone to blow up. And it's pretty quiet, like when we're sitting there and we're like, dude, it's over 60. Like, what is going on? Like, There's nothing that's going to stop this. And then you don't even get like, you're almost the one who's going to tweet kind of your normie friends and be like, hey, dude, are you checking this out? And it just seems so weird that no one's hip to it right now.
No, the one thing I will say, the one caveat I'll say is when I am getting in normie land, I am bringing it up more, especially the ETFs, just because, like I know a lot of people are like, and the normies aren't even here yet. I guess I I'm a sucker. I feel kind of bad for them, but I bring it up, and I will say that a lot of them are like, "What was the name? Like, which ETF should I get?" And stuff like that. Obviously, I'm not saying hold your private keys and stuff because they're just not there yet, but they
Right.
are very receptive. So, not that I want to go on the offense on this, but people are definitely listening, and I'm always surprised how surprised they are at where it is. They're like, "Oh, didn't that die like 2 years ago?" You're like, "Where have you been?" Because that's all we think about, and anyone listening to this, that's all we think about is where the price of Bitcoin is and what's going on and what's going on with ordinals. And these guys aren't, but they're receptive, I will say. So it's a start.
And for you, having been through other cycles, it would have been a lot more confusing for you to give that advice as to how to kind of get cooking and get moving. Now you can talk to, some of our old friends and be like, dude, you can just put some of this ETF in one of your portfolios. It's a click,
Yeah.
and it certainly wasn't that way before. They don't even have to interface with a exchange to do it now. So
Right.
It really is that, Staples easy button.
Yeah. So let's give some context today as to why it was so absolutely bonkers. So we started at 57 and then we went up. One stat that everyone should know is, and the reason, we love our ordinals, we love, Bitcoin, we love holding private keys, but the reason we're talking so much about the ETFs is not because we're big TradFi lovers. It's more like this is the mouth of the dam, and the dam doors are literally wide open. Now, are people, is a ton rushing through yet? No, because like we said, there's a lot of setup, but right now the demand is about 2,800 Bitcoin a day. And with mining rewards, the supply right now is 900 a day. So that's 3x the supply that is being mined each day of new Bitcoin. And, at the halving, April 18th, which is about 50 days from now, that's a 3x demand over supply. So at the halving, it's going to be a 6x demand. And that's assuming everything holds firm to today. I mean, I suspect way more is going to start coming in. So the toothpaste squeeze has to come at some point. I mean, we've been talking about it in the show. It's our theory, but you're never right on timing, but we're just all like, I've got the popcorn out and I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think that one part of the equation that maybe wasn't factored in enough from the traditional folks is that people that already hold Bitcoin are not looking to sell it. So I think that just really accelerates this process of price discovery when, they're used to like, oh, I can sell that and make a profit and then da 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 da. But it's like, dude, no one wants to sell. Like the only reason people are parting with Bitcoin is to get ordinals. You know what I mean? That's the only way that it's really going anywhere right now, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I'll dump it. I'll take a little profit, because everybody's dyed in wool with the understanding that we're just sitting down to where this thing's going to go.
Well, that's everybody that Disco, but remember the short sellers got liquidated literally immediately. I think it was like it was a lot, whatever it was, 1.4 billion, whatever it was a huge number, and they got liquidated instantly, which means that they have to cover their losses, and it's just that's what causes even bigger squeezes up. So it's happening. So Disco, tell us, I've got the chart down here and I think it's big enough for our friends on X. What? Yeah, put those goggles on. So we got up to, what was the high today?
I think we touched 64, like low 64.
Yep. So, and then it went to 64. So it basically went straight from 50, whatever it was, 57 to 60, 50, 56, 57, all the way up to 64 by about 11 o'clock. So halfway through trading, it was already the highest voluminous day ever for ETF trading. We go to 64. This chart on CoinGecko only shows 63, but we know, this is kind of important too, because CoinGecko, they probably looking at the Coinbases and the Krakens and the exchanges, but remember the Bitcoin ETFs are trading paper, and then they're +1. They've got to pick up the Bitcoin after hours. And I think they have a day, or they might even have 2 days to pick up that Bitcoin. So there's kind of a disconnect where the ETFs are actually possibly during business hours, mirroring the price a little more accurately. So it goes up to 64 midday, or the highest volume ever. And then what happened?
Well, people are sitting there going crazy. Like, this thing's not going to stop. Everyone's doing like little all-time high parties and parades and getting ready to go. And then if you happen to have a Coinbase account and you log in, there's a high percentage chance that all of a sudden your total balance went to zero. And I know that I experienced that when I was trying to make a transaction. I'm like, where did it go? And
Yeah.
it totally like triggered PTSD from like the Luna days, or just the dark days. It was like, wait, what happened? Did I get rugged by freaking Coinbase, one of the biggest things? And what happened, I don't know the exact reason, but number wise, you were sitting at 64, and then right around the time that stuff happened with Coinbase going to zero, it dipped down to just below 60 again. So it was like, oh my God, we just lost everything we had. And it was kind of like the token crypto, like, oh, there it was. Hope you enjoyed it for the minute or two that we had it up there. But literally, Brian Armstrong was basically saying that they got more demand and they didn't have kind of the infrastructure on to be able to handle it at that point. But of course, it leads to a million different speculations and scenarios and things that could have happened. Like, did somebody step in and say, dude, stop this train? We'll pull the keys out of this.
Yeah. Like who knows? But he said he was prepared for a 10x today. Why it was 10x today, they were prepared for. So it sounds like a bunch of BS to me, but they were prepared for a 10x traffic growth, and they crashed again. And there's a difference too between crashing and showing a zero balance for everybody. Like, what a fail, and it's funny, like Coinbase, we have to take a step back because they've done so much for this industry, and Brian Armstrong has, and all these guys have. But I will say, as an older Coinbase person, when there wasn't that many options, I think it was pre-Kraken, before they were public, I used Coinbase quite a bit, especially when they had GDAX, and then they bought it and kind of just like vanillafied it. And I got to say, when they went public, a lot of us obviously were like, oh my God, we have exposure to crypto beyond, I think, GBTC. Now, maybe that wasn't even around yet, but we had some exposure to crypto with our portfolios. So, a lot of us bought Coinbase, and we got just dumped on by they came out with the stock, they kept raising the price. And then when that bell was rung by them and they debuted on the New York Stock Exchange, it was the highest, was probably the first minute of the price. They all dumped, and they dumped their bags on us. So don't think rugs don't happen in TradFi world too, because Coinbase did it to a lot of us oldest holders. And I've kept holding, and now it's within 20 or 30% of those all-time highs from several years ago. But it's just another chink in the armor of, in my opinion, that's just poorly run. And what did Kraken? I'm loving Kraken more and more and more. What was their tweet when Coinbase had to be like, oh, we're sorry, we're down?
It was like, it was so basic and so perfect. It just said, just in all caps, not down. Yeah. And it was just such a win. And, not to jump on, the Kraken bandwagon right now, but you really do, it comes down to when people always say, like, dude, you have one job, you know what I mean? And Coinbase is sitting there being the custodians of X amount of the ETFs. So they're kind of the standard bearer and kind of the winner of this from that perspective. Yet, on a day that, what was it? Sailor, one of them says, like, out of the whole year, there's X amount of days where all the activity, where the action really happens and can kind of set it off for the whole year. This was one of those days. You don't want to be
definitely one of those days.
This is a day to make sure that you're, you should have some things in place, especially because it's not the first time it's gone down. You have plenty of time to prepare for it. So I just think there's a ton of egg on the face. I personally think I'm going to exit, a relationship with them just because there's nothing good when you lose the control, so I've already learned from the past where I don't store anything really on a centralized exchange. But even having some stuff, because I was trying to accumulate a little to do a transaction, I had a little bit there, and it's just so gut wrenching when you just lose the power and you're like, dude, that's my money, I can't touch it, and there's no answer as to why or what's happening. So boo on all that. It just totally took the wind out of the sails. I don't know if that is, like, I'm not enough of a financial analyst to understand if that's exactly what it was that led to the dip.
Right.
Like maybe it was shorts or futures or whatever it may be, because there was just so much inertia going one way. But I'll definitely say it emotionally took the buzz out of the freaking day and kind of, just kind of took it back to zero a little bit. And it really does reinforce, for newer people and everything, it really does reinforce the fact that you've got to make sure that you understand where you're storing your assets, make sure that you have a strategy, and make sure that you're not beholden on something that is ultimately somewhat centralized. And a flip could get switched, because we did see that happen today.
Yeah, and just to drive home your point before we move on, because I was at the airport, you and I were on the phone, and you're like, dude, like you kept calling me back. I'm like, dude, I'm getting on the plane. How many times do we have to talk? Like, there's more. Now Coinbase is literally down. I'm showing a zero balance, and sure enough, I go on X, I go on all my Discord channels, and everyone's like, I got no money on Coinbase. So it was everybody it happened to. They must have had like a backup server just to show a screen, so it just didn't look like a 500 error, like site totally down. It was like a fake site with nothing on it. But that correlates time-wise exactly when it went. This says 63, when it went from 64 all the way down back to about 59.5, and these were very short crashes. We're already back at 62.5. So I mean, you can't stop this train. But Coinbase, Disco said it best on our phone call, like, thank you for being responsible for literally, we had the momentum, who knows where it could have gone. In the long run, it's not going to matter, it's going to come back, but you couldn't handle a basic surge. You've been around for what, 12 years now? Like, come on. Like I'm kind of with Disco. I already had an account at Kraken and other places and cash, but I already didn't use Coinbase much, but it certainly does not make me want to use it more. And maybe it is time just to get rid of that stuff. Why be KYC'd and fingerprinted everywhere when you don't have to be?
Yeah, and what are you going to do? It's the old fool me once, fool me twice sort of situation, right? Like, I don't want to get, in a really tough situation on that. So that's probably enough on that one.
Yeah.
If we want to talk really quick, though, I do think just pointing out the volume that was going on these today is pretty freaking amazing. Just looking at the kind of numbers and the charts from that side of it, because I don't think that there's any other. I just think a new story is being written every day. And, even I had like this weird kind of Teflon-y vibe today, which I certainly didn't have, at other points where I was like totally cool with the Coinbase. I was like, oh, that'll come back. We'll be all right. That's just offline for a little bit. Like I would have normally been like to my wife, like, something's going on, I'm not sure. We'll see. I think we'll be okay.
I think we're broke. We have to sell the house. Yeah. I think you get battle armor. You know what I mean? Over time, you get battle armor. So go ahead. I know you're mid thought, but I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, but it's just like, I'm like, okay, dude, if it goes down a little bit, you know what, that could be an opportunity to get a little bit more, because this thing's not going to stop. And I think that it's just, a pure numbers game, as we've said with the toothpaste analogy prior to the approval. But when you look at just the tonnage of, just the volume we're setting records like every other day, and they're not just like, oh, it was 102 and now it's 104. They're like doubling records. So it's just exponential that you're seeing this stuff going down.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. We basically, what was it? We went from volume 8 with GBTC, 8 billion in volume today. Without GBTC, it was 6 billion, and that's double any other day. It had beaten the record by midday, thus the doubling. But it's just these numbers are crazy, and it's Tuesday. Like, I don't know why today was some special day, but clearly more and more institutional folks are getting in, because they're probably like, we got to front run the rest of the masses, like there's like different degrees of front running. We front run, everyone who's listening to this, who we follow and follows us, our community front ran all of this. And we're just like, it's full popcorn and JPEG degen season. But it's just, it's mind blowing. I don't know how else to put it.
I mean, last week people were freaking out because there was a bank holiday on Monday. So Tuesday, it just was, they were like, we've never seen anything like this, and just to fact check, today is Wednesday, not Tuesday. And you're seeing this happen. So, right, so I wanted to do it subtly, but we are on a different day of the week, sir.
Yeah.
But
so I was gone for 2 days.
No, but that's how it feels. It could have been like a month, like it's just such an interesting baseline that we're living in now, and these numbers just continue to not only go up, but just continue to impress. And, it does give you that feeling. And I think everyone's going through the feeling of, I wish I had more, and that's kind of the new baseline feeling. It's just like, dude, I wish I had more. And how can we make that work?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin, it seems like it scratches so many itches. You're like, well, I want to invest in a new technology. What should I get? Bitcoin. And now when you look at stocks and bonds and other investment vehicles, or parking some in cash because you think the other shoe's going to drop with the economy or it's going to break people because interest rates are so high, you're like, well, where should I, if I have cash, where should I park it? Bitcoin. Well, if I want to go high tech, where should I park it? Bitcoin. I mean, it's like, it's so many answers. But we're preaching to the choir here. I mean, it's no, but the volume is insane. I can't.
It appears to be the slipper that fits most feet.
I love that analogy.
It's like, yes. Why aren't I doing more? And then you're also getting it like, hey, it's crazy comfortable because it's going up and I'm feeling great on that side. So yeah, I know obviously everyone can feel the bullishness. It's just, you can't go through a day like this and then see it still settle so close to an all-time high and not think that we're at the precipice of seeing that happen. And, it's just, everyone's excited. I can't imagine how you couldn't be.
100%. So speaking of Kraken, they, I feel like people are getting more, they're fighting back. So what's going on with Kraken right now?
Well, Kraken kind of went on it was great because, they were getting attacked by the SEC. They were getting named by the SEC, and everyone was kind of, even at the time when it happened initially, months ago, was like, dude, this is kind of BS. Like it's kind of a nothing burger here. There's nothing really there. Right. And then Kraken kind of took it to them with a little digital campaign last week saying, hey, we're going to stand up to you guys and to the SEC. And they had a nice little kind of ad campaign going on that. And then today, the Chamber of Digital Commerce, which is, a big group tied with, a lot of powerful people that are advocating on behalf of the industry, they jumped in and they said, we're standing up for Kraken. And, they filed a brief against the SEC on this. So it just feels like, the bully in terms of the SEC's kind of, it's kind of like it's been exposed, and it's like, dude, let's punch back a little bit. And that's what we like to see. So I know you're pulling that up, and it's pretty cool just to see a proactive, kind of stance from strength as opposed to being on our heels.
Yeah. So this is Kraken's Twitter feed, and it's perfectly showing up on the screen. Now that we're streaming vertical, we have to make sure that things can be seen, but it's cool. They're fighting back, and, and Coinbase gets credit. Remember a lot before them.
Yeah.
Even David Hoffman, like a lot of these guys, like have stood up to the SEC, and people are fighting back. And obviously there's more money now. We're in a bull market, but they're sick of it, and they realize, like, wait, we can fight this. This is complete shakedown. I think the SEC is so used to shaking down the banks for doing so much illegal stuff and shaking down different. And the people are just like, we've got to keep this quiet and just settle with the best rate we can and just move on from this. And now I think Kraken is realizing, just like Coinbase and these other folks did, is if you don't fight back, there's not going to be much left, and you're just going to be at Gary Gensler and the SEC's mercy. And, hopefully we get a regime change, and maybe Lynn Alden can sit in that seat. I'm sorry. Is Lynn, is she in the SEC? I'm getting the wrong person, but we need new leadership there, but for now it's good to see Kraken
Yeah.
fighting back. So Kraken, you're double featured on this show, but
Yeah.
they've always kept their head down, and they've always just kept everything secure, and it's slow and steady, and they've always taken user privacy and security to the utmost degree, and I think we're going to see in this cycle, seeing it kind of pay off with people who become more educated and appreciate that more.
Yeah. So it feels like the momentum's coming from, coming up towards kind of the establishment that was trying to keep things down. So we're rooting for all of that. Just a side note, this isn't something that we're going to get into too deep. We talked about it last week, but John Deaton, the guy who's running against Elizabeth Warren, has kind of, he's been gaining some traction. Like Mark Cuban retweeted his announcement, so that's fairly significant. And Boston.com put out a piece of research that they did that actually says that they believe Elizabeth Warren is vulnerable to John Deaton. So I know that that's supposed to be one of the most, safe seats there ever is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, they said, when we asked our readers if they think Deaton could beat Warren in November, more than 500 responded, and a majority, 57%, said yes. So
well, this was Boston Magazine. This wasn't Bitcoin Magazine.
No, this was Boston.com. So like the Boston, I think it's tied to the Boston Globe or whatever, but just to be able to see some sort of formulation of kind of a resistance to the powers that be is what we've always been kind of, low key rooting for and advocating. So it's nice to continue to get kind of some good news on those fronts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one where I'll believe it after I see it. How do you spell Deaton? I've got Polymarket pulled up here. That would be interesting to see. This one's got to be in here. I'll just type in Warren.
Deaton.
Oh, it's DEA. Okay. Elizabeth Warren crypto bill will come by June. All right. DEATON. Let's see if Deaton's in here. Presidential election winner, presidential Republican VP. Wow. I need to add that one. Like, that's kind of silly. I haven't used Polymarket, but I'm shocked that it's Deaton or Warren, or she's in there for that silly bill that she's trying to pass. But other than that, it's not
the Pirates of Penzance bill or whatever they call it.
Jesus. Regarding Deaton, I don't know a ton about him. He sounds like a really interesting guy, but if her seat was vulnerable, that would be pretty cool. I feel like because she's part of the boomer generation, this has got to be her 5th or 4th term or something like that. It's been a while. You'd think that she's pretty secure, but man, that would be cool if she lost. That would be a big win for crypto and, in my opinion, freedom to transact.
Yeah, I agree. So this kind of happened this week that I wanted to bring up and talk to you about a little bit, because there's been, everything kind of moved to Magic Eden, and we talked a lot about, the last handful of shows talking about some of the really, kind of interesting and evolving projects in the ordinal space and everything like that. But then you saw Magic Eden, like this week they launched Ethereum, and they partnered with Yuga, and it's just, I'm trying to see, what that really means, and, what that could mean to some of the projects that are already existing, and see if Yuga is going to have influence on them and things like that. So I know it's kind of a multi-pronged question, but I'm just trying to learn a little bit more about what your take is on some of that stuff.
Yeah, at first I felt like it was a nothing burger, because I know that, Yuga I saw the list that of Yuga NFT properties that are on Magic Eden solely, and it's like the Codas and the heavy metals and the Dookie Pass things and all that stuff. So it's definitely not their crown jewels. It's not the Bored Apes. It's not the Mutant Apes. I'm trying to think what would fall under. Definitely not in there, but those two are not. Obviously, it's not the CryptoPunks, so they're exclusive for all these other ones. The whole point of them partnering together was kind of to lock in these royalties, whereas Bitcoin is less about the royalties, partially because it couldn't be done, but I think because of the Bitcoin ethos. I know a lot of the early founders were like, no, like I put the art out there. I sold it for a lot or a little with some, like Flow State was awesome. The Ordinal Pucks, it was 0.01 Bitcoin. It's probably the best spreadsheet launch ever for those 100 punks who got the first ones. I got in on secondary. But it feels to me like we're getting into a very closed system here. And I didn't even think about this, but let's just bring up front, like Bitcoin punks, right? Those are pixel by pixel perfect punks that were inscribed by whoever could be first. So if you were first on Bitcoin with the pixel by pixel perfect CryptoPunk from ETH, you then inscribed and then got to hold that punk. I'm not a big fan because I hold a CryptoPunk, and I honestly tried to do mine just so I had mine. And for some reason it wasn't pixel by pixel perfect. And the guy who I'm not honestly a huge fan of, who did it, who made a lot of money on it for IP property that's not his, he was like, yep, sorry, there's nothing I can do, which is probably the true answer. But obviously as a fellow CryptoPunk holder, I'm like, well, then F you, So, but now that raises a really interesting question here. So are Bitcoin punks, or what I'm really into, the Ordinal Punks, which is a sub 1K collection, those are more loosely tied to the CryptoPunks. I think the art is pretty spot on, like the shape of the head, where some of these derivatives just look stupid. They're like potato head punks. Like they don't fit, but these are like blue punks, robot punks. So they are different enough in my opinion. But does that mean that Magic Eden, who really has a monopoly right now, just like OpenSea did on ETH 3 or 4 years ago, does that mean that Ordinal Punks, or which I would care about, and Bitcoin punks, which I'm probably being a total hypocrite here, which I wouldn't care about because I don't have one and I kind of got screwed by them, and I own a CryptoPunk, so screw whoever owns 8205 of my CryptoPunk because that's technically, according to Yuga, that's my IP. I wish CryptoPunks were CCO and it was just totally wide open, but it's not. So are they going to then delist those? So I don't know. I'll throw it to you first. I have a bunch of thoughts, but the Ordinal Punk one kind of scares me because where do you draw that line? And it's not like they have to go to court. They just have to be like, hey, company that we're in bed with who kind of dominates the marketplace right now, like we're together. It's all about royalties now. And these are copies. I don't want these. And they could pull it and they don't have to ask. It's a private company. It's their market. They could do what they want.
They could pull it, but you would still own it, right?
Yes. Yeah. They can't. Yeah.
They can't.
The blockchain's immutable. It's just the number one and really only place where PFP collections are traded. It would not be there.
Yeah. But there's only with the Ordinal, the OPs, there's 100, right?
There's 100 OPs. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not really listed that much.
True.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be more worried on the other, because the other one's a bigger collection, the Bitcoin punks, right?
Yeah, it's the full 10,000. So basically the first one,
I'd see them going at that for like, I don't know if they'd go after just 100 one necessarily, but it's just so weird because Magic Eden's essentially OpenSea for all the chains now, right? Like they just kind of slid in and became, everyone was down on OpenSea, and it's like, well, now everyone's on Magic Eden, and they pretty much monopolized all the different chains as well. So like that was, stealth move, I guess. But
well, remember one caveat for that: they're not dominating the ETH chain. I have not pulled up a chart as to who has what, but Blur, with all the wash trading, definitely has the most traffic. Don't forget about Blur. So just because Magic Eden has ETH now, and just because they're doing royalties experiments with these Bored Ape collections, except for the big MAYC and BAYC, like just because it's there doesn't mean people are going to buy ETH NFTs. They're like, I don't know if I want to mix wallets and NFTs with Magic Eden. I might get lazy at some point and do it with some of the lower value stuff, but the bigger value stuff, I'd rather connect a wallet separately, at least to create the illusion of separateness. Because Magic Eden, like, I mean, they dominated with Solana. They were the number one market there, and I would argue they're probably, there's trade-offs, but they're probably the best, smoothest looking market out there. I don't love that you can't just find any inscription and just like buy it, or see like what's been inscribed recently and just buy some of that stuff. Maybe you can, I just don't know how to do it. It's not easy. They're all about the collection, but they've done a really good job with curating. So with Bored Ape, I'm interested to see, I'm not anti royalties at all for these companies. I just think it's not that realistic. And I think Yuga and possibly even Magic Eden are painting themselves in a bit of a corner here. And I think it just feels like Web3 kind of monopolized, or at least oligopolized, for the benefit of those two. And I guess if I was Yuga, I'd want my royalties too, but it doesn't seem like that's the playbook moving forward to me.
I mean, we talked a little bit last week on another aspect that was almost the same theme of kind of the Web 2 for Yuga, kind of like holding on. And when they were, what we were talking about with them with Moonbirds and with Proof and everything. And it's like, you almost feel like they're just going to do everything they can to have this, claim of relevance in kind of this next gen wave that's happening. And, so they're probably wise in their own way to, try to align and partner with as many organizations and larger things as they can. But I think that it goes back to, the term you coined of, the ODM and the ordinal degenerate mindshare. And I just think good luck for, any of these heritage brands, and, to be able to capture the imagination of the people that are really going to drive the marketplace forward. And, you see it with, when you do go to Magic Eden and you look at, what's happening with the node monks, and, it's just always something that kind of is what's next. And, right, that kind of the degenerate culture is to kind of move to the shining objects and move to those things. So it almost feels like a clunky, like steam engine trying to be like, wait up folks, many people can fit on me, and it's like, yeah, dude, we don't need that right now. So not to, fade anything from that perspective, but I haven't heard like a uniquely innovative new idea out of that camp in a while that's relevant with some of the new tools we've seen.
Yeah, holding on to the past is tough. And like you said, with the ODM, the ordinal degenerate mindshare, and that you could go EDM, the ETH degenerate, or NFT degenerate mindshare. But yeah, I mean, the focus right now, the baton has definitely been passed to, there's a lot of stuff going on in ETH, but there's so much going on in ordinals. Like, look at Azuki. They're trying these partnerships now. I still see a couple of people in my timeline. They're like struggling for relevance. I think they are now probably trying bigger stuff with video and anime, but is it too late? Like, do people give a crap anymore? And the good news is people who love anime, like, so they might be okay there. And I think they still have a good base of people who just love Azuki. They love the art, but I think they're in big trouble, because in order to stay relevant, you've got to keep people interested and engaged. And I just think that drop, a lot of people tried to stick around, but like, if you stayed a little too loyal and your focus stayed on Azuki, you're basically waiting now probably a year. Maybe you'll start seeing good videos in 4-6 months at best. And will the videos be good? And can you start pumping them out with quality? Like, now I think you're waiting for the home run. But with Bored Apes, like it feels like you're kind of going backwards. I think Yuga's done a great job. They set the playbook for this. Azuki tried to follow him. Azuki failed. Bored Apes is going down, but Bored Apes is building stuff in Miami. Like, they're doing real world stuff too. But I just think keeping people's mind share and attention span now is so difficult. And I think this is going to backfire.
Yeah. And just to kind of look at that, this is a kind of a left field comment, but when like, as if you listen to the show, like I was told, and I did, kind of prune my X or Twitter feed, from some of the stuff that used to be on it.
Right.
And that being said, it's been a much more enjoyable user experience over the past couple of weeks. Like,
Oh yeah.
it feels great. But one thing I've seen very, very little about, even though it's happening right now, is ETH Denver. Like, I just haven't heard or seen much buzz out of that. And last week, I think, was the build week, and now it's like the party week and stuff. And maybe it's because there's so many macro things happening, or, whatever it may be, but it just hasn't commanded a lot of attention from myself to really dig into, like
for
I
you,
just haven't.
But it's for you though, because I think like I see even Bitcoin people like, hey, I'm going to be there. You want to meet? Yeah. Like it's like, we're going to take over as ordinals, but who knows how well it did. But remember, the more you prune, that's kind of the weird thing. It's like you're basically removing those channels from your remote control. So you're like, oh, I guess the world is peaceful now. It's like, nah, you just don't have the news channels. You just don't go to the news channels anymore. Like nothing's peaceful. So it's a bias, but it means you can only filter so much in your brain at the same time. Like you and I talk about this all the time. Like you've got ETH, Solana, which I've never really been interested in, but you've got all these ecosystems. But even with ordinals and Bitcoin, we can barely keep up with that. Like Natcats, I wish I'd gotten one early, and I was starting to research it, and I'm like, I'm going on a little trip. I don't have time to do it now. And now they're high, but I'm like, I might sneak one later if I still like it. Like, I think the key is to be okay with when you think you've missed out. Like if you ever try and compare yourself to other people, what they may have, like, oh, this guy just got this shroom, or this guy just got this and the other thing. It's like, you had a chance to get a shroom, and you were like, you said one of the coolest things I've ever heard. You're like, I know it's a good decision to get one, but I'm earlier in the journey. I'm not at that stage yet. I'm still building my Bitcoin stash, my ETH stash. I want to get a validator, and as much as I know I'm probably going to miss out on that one, it's not the time. And obviously now seeing the floor is probably 2. You're well, maybe, but Bitcoin also went to 60 from like 40 from 2 weeks ago. So it's like, did you lose? I don't know. And will that stick with the illiquid ordinal? Maybe not, but not having regrets and being like, you're your own investor and you're just playing against yourself. You're not playing against everybody else, because most people are going to be like, all I do is win, and obviously we win and we lose. We just have to make educated bets without making it a FOMO bet.
And I think that's a really good just kind of tenet to remember, right? When it's just that as this space gets more and more exciting, and as more of the, building outcomes from the bear become, reality, and we see that, it's going to get just even harder to do this. But you have to realize that you can't understand and be on top of everything. There's just too many things going on. And if you're going to try to have, octopus hands on every different thing, popping at every different time, you're just not going to be able to run the mic that well. So I agree. And thank you for saying that, because I am still very positive on Ethereum, and I still believe in Ethereum. But to your point, certain things capture your imagination, and then you start to get your little echo chamber on that because you're so into it and giddy about it that you start thinking that that's the only channel on the television, right? And you're exactly right. Like, maybe I just didn't have the package to look at, what's going on all that stuff, because I'm sure people would be like, dude, you're such an idiot. ETH Denver is just blowing up, and you're just totally sleeping. So I appreciate that kind of pullback on that, because it's something that I think everyone can benefit from. Like, just focus on what you can. Realize also that everything's kind of going up, so that's great. Let everyone have a good party. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the only one who won. Like, there's going to be a lot of victories, and that's really great, because everyone went through a rough, couple of years. So, let everybody have their time.
Yeah. And always take your own temperature, and just like, if you're trying to do, like you said, with octopus hands, and you're trying to look and be and do everything, you're probably going to make a lot more mistakes where you wake up in the morning like, oh, I probably was a little over my skis, and that, I've had, we've got a big show on R6 and the Spaces on Friday. And, I've had some people be like, is the is the team like, are they good and stuff? I'm like, dude, I'm not on the team, but like, you gotta, like I've got these rares and I'm worried about it. And it's like, dude, if you're ever if you're staying up at night, like, unless you've been a professional trader in other aspects and TradFi or whatever, and you're just like cold veins, ice cold veins, like, be careful. And we don't know what's going to happen, especially like with Bitcoin and ETH. Yeah, sure. Like, I think stacking sats is the way to go, but with ordinals, there's plenty of upside and money to be made. But when the focus goes somewhere else, when the ODM goes somewhere else, like, if you're left holding those bags and it never comes back to you, I mean, look how many times node monks, the focus goes on the node monks and then it goes down a little, but now it's got a new higher floor. And it seems like node monks has captured that imagination where it kind of keeps cycling back to those. But right now I would say it's just hovering, but the floor isn't going down either. Just so much other stuff is going on, but that attention will go to that again. And then the floor might go to 0.4, 0.5, who knows, but you got to stay within your means and buy stuff. If it goes to zero, probably buy stuff that you wouldn't be too embarrassed to show your spouse or hang on the wall or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, there's so many different subcurrents that happen that as just a, guy in his basement or whatever it is, you can't really be fully in the loop on, what's happening in making markets. And, we're starting to hear a theme evolve of, folks from Ethereum are starting, collectors from Ethereum are starting to infiltrate, the ordinal side of it. And it's like, so there's all these different things. You got to wonder
ready,
what's
we're coming for your inscriptions and ordinals. Like, we're going to buy you out. You're like, okay, well, I'll set the price. And if I want to sell, like, you win, and if you can 4X it, like, great, that's good for you. And if you can't, like, and then, the bag goes down, like, so, there are some big whales coming over. It's annoying, like, some of the personalities and how they do it. Cause I think with ordinals, I feel like the common vibe is like, hey, everybody's welcome. Come on over. And that obviously collection by collection, there's a lot of turf wars and stuff like that, but I think it's at least so far in our little year-old ecosystem a little less. So hopefully as the ETH folks come over and they come back to the mother chain, that it's kumbaya for all, but I don't expect that to happen. But again, depending on how you curate your own feed, you might be seeing crazy making and people FOMOing this and that, and you're chasing them. And I might see little Dalai Lama, little ordinal punks, a little, people with really good thoughts and takes, and then kind of trying to echo those and add conversation to that. But it's cool that you're seeing a better timeline because it makes everything a lot more chill and a lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of you just got to factor in that a lot of those sort of braggadocious statements or whatever, those of people coming in, that's obviously there's some insecurity in not being, the first in on that sort of thing and wanting to kind of feed the ego and be like, hey, you still got to, respect what I've done and who I am. So, everything's got to go through that filter of what's really the purpose and what's someone really trying to say and why.
Yep, for sure. So I think we've covered enough. Are we good, Disco? Do we have anything else to add?
Let's take a quick look to see if we might have hit an all-time high while we're going. You never know these days with how quickly things are moving.
That's true. We are live, everybody. If you think you're watching, like, we are actually live now. I can't see you. I could go into Twitter and see if there's any comments, but it was weird. I had it open. The cool thing is it's like pink on there. So on a Spaces, you actually get a different color. Again, we're just experimenting with these. So that's kind of cool. And it says Blutoshi is hosting. And then there we are. So how meta is that? We're talking about us, talking about us, and a bunch of things just came on. So Blutoshi wants you to moderate comments. So maybe they have to be moderated. So we've got to learn how Periscope does work with this. But we're experimenting with video, and Periscope I know has worked for a while, but I'm curious if this is a priority for X. I feel like Elon is throwing a lot of cool stuff out there, but we'll have to see what kind of sticks and what doesn't. But this is another fun to play with. And for all our podcast listeners, thank you for listening as well. What were we going to say, Disco?
Yeah, I was just going to say we were going to try to do of video spaces. And there was an announcement that was going to be ready to roll today. And then we kind of baited it and decided to go with this and wait for that to get a little bit more built out. But, it's incredible just to kind of, put a wrap on today, so if it's at Bitcoin right now is hovering, it's 62, frankly, like 62. So you're still up 5,000 from where we were 24 hours ago. So while it felt a little bit like the air got pulled out of the parade, it's back. And I'm just telling you, tomorrow, I have no idea where it's going to go, but I would be very shocked if it was down. It just seems like we're just kind of legging, and, it's kind of baby steps to the all-time high, and then we're in uncharted territory. So it's just really cool to be able to go through this with everybody. And, everything that we talk about, this shows more kind of to help newer folks who are going to maybe get involved in the space, get a baseline, and want to make sure that everybody understands to really regulate your FOMO, make sure that, anything that we say, don't take it as investment advice. It's the show's for entertainment purposes. So be sure to do your own research and make sure that, you don't get in over your head or over your skis, and be careful out there and enjoy the ride, because I can't think of anything sadder to me than not being tuned into what happened today, because it was just so entertaining and so fun and vital. And I just feel like people that aren't paying attention are missing out on one of the most interesting and entertaining things in the world right now.
Yeah. Like if you had to write a book on the history of early ordinals in this phase of Bitcoin, when it hit the mainstream, like you literally would have to go day by day, be like, too much happened. It'd be like 16 volumes, but that's why we're here. It's fun. So until next time, guys, take care. Like I said, we're experimenting in different places, but you can see us in podcasts. You can see us on YouTube and on X, of course, but definitely please subscribe, hit the like button, comment, and all that stuff, because that helps with these algorithms that sometimes can be infuriating, but sometimes can be very rewarding if you like the content and you feel like the signal is worthy of your time. So thank you, everybody. Until next time.
All right. See you later.